Okay, so first off, I used to think for the longest time, I never got close enough to mesquite barbecue. I used to think that it was just saying mosquito barbecue. when I was little. Okay, don't take it the wrong way.
No, I just love stuff like that.
I just never paid attention, and I was like mosquito bar, and then I was like, oh, mesquite, and then I was like, the hell is mesquite? Especially these are kettle cooked chips, so they're crispier.
They get the crunch.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I like it. So we're coming down to the end of the Halloweens.
Mm-hmm.
This was a fun experiment. I enjoyed it.
I did not.
You hated it?
No, I'm just kidding.
No, yeah. I felt coming up with John, covering his whole... I wanted to do something John Carpenter to end it, but not one of them felt right. I was like, let's just do the whole shebang. Do the whole guy.
Well, you had that, I'd say. You knew that one from the beginning.
Yeah.
But you wanted to do John Carpenter.
Yeah. I was like, once I figured that, once I knew that that's how I wanted to end it, the rest of it kind of wrote itself. Mm-hmm. And I was like, all right, well, let's just do this little fun spooky season experiment and see how it goes. And I don't know. I think we did pretty well with it. And I know I'm about as hyped as I've ever been for the end of October here. And I think we're going to have some fun with this one.
Yeah. Are we?
Yeah.
Okay.
The master of darkness, as he's referred to, John Carpenter. I grew up on the really abstract, weird John Carpenter movies. The weird ones you'd never heard of, Assault on Precinct 13.
Yeah.
All the just not the best that he's known for, Halloween and The Thing, which are great movies. I love both of them.
Yeah.
But there's also the really, really weird ones that are just like Escape from LA. The odd sequel to
that
Escape from New York.
That was, believe it or not, my very first John Carpenter movie.
Really?
That I ever saw.
That's very interesting.
Escape from LA.
Yeah. It might have been mine too, or at least early on, because we just watched them all. They were on AMC. Mm-hmm. They were on whatever.
HBO or whatever. It was that classic, it was during the summer, I think. There'd always be those handful of movies that had come out somewhat recently, and they were on HBO, Cinemax, Showtime, whatever you had.
Yeah.
Whatever cable, if you could have it.
Yeah.
That's what it was
Sometimes it was better to get them on the more regular cable networks because they'd have all the weird moments cut out of it.
Yeah.
It just get even weirder than it already was.
Yeah, but Escape from LA was mine, I'm pretty sure. I didn't even know who John Carpenter was at that point.
Yeah. He's one of the ones, as soon as you've seen a few of them, you start putting the pieces together, this is a whole ass dude that's doing this. But yeah, his career was an interesting one. His dad was a classically trained musician, if memory serves.
Well, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, his dad was actually a college music professor, and he learned a lot of what he knew, a lot of what he pushed forward as the best qualities of his composing, which he's as notable as a composer as he is for his directing.
Which I think is beyond admirable.
Yeah.
I can barely write a sentence, let alone create a film and then write the score on top of it.
Yeah, he's one of those ones that is just so multi-talented, and he just spent a few years slaving away churning scripts out for a long time before he got his notoriety as a director. I mean, he was doing all things at once, but before he was really starting to get the esteem. And Halloween was his first big explosion, but he had a short film that blew up. I'm going to be doing a lot of this. I already apologize.
Very good. Gives me a chance to
just want to be sure I get my facts straight.
Snack on these chips. So good.
Your lips.
Here, I see you got. Well, no, okay.
I got the array here. Yeah.
I see you've got Fog.
I watched The Fog just today. Actually,
Wasn't that honestly? I really liked that movie.
I actually watched. I had some time after too, and because this last year I picked up the 4K remaster that they did, and I haven't had a chance to go through all the bonus materials and everything. So I watched the 45-minute documentary that they had on there, and there's a lot of details about making that movie that I didn't know.
Really? Okay.
The fact that they pulled almost the entire crew off of Halloween, and it makes sense because they had Jamie Lee Curtis and a lot of the others involved, but also some notable names that were involved in The Thing were attached to that. What's his name?
George Romero.
George Romero did come up in that documentary too, which was interesting. Rob Bottin, as he's called, stepped in late in the game in The Fog. Apparently there was an edit that was screened of The Fog, and it didn't work.
Okay.
And it was kind
to
of...
be clear, we're talking about the 1980
yes.
original Fog.
Yeah.
not
the remake of The Fog.
I think there was
which
like a
came
2000s remake. Yeah.
I want to say 2009.
So, yeah, somewhere around, yeah.
The cast of characters that they had, not just like the actors, but like the crew and everybody that was involved, a lot of whom were right off of Halloween's success. I mean, they were going to give another film to John Carpenter after Halloween because it was a huge box office success. And he eventually didn't want to do Halloween 2. I could go into that whole thing as a topic on its own because the traverse of the Halloween franchise is a roller coaster.
Well, damn it, let's go into it. You bring it up. Give me, or do you not want?
It's kind of separate from his career, which is why I don't want to bring.
He doesn't want to do it, folks.
We will do that. We will do that another time.
Okay.
Just the Halloween franchise as a chunk is
okay.
Is a good one, but. The Fog specifically, Rob Bottin coming in late in the game, they actually went back and reshot a lot of the material that they had because they didn't have the ghosts actually physically killing people in a lot of the coverage that they had. So they backfilled a lot of that earlier on in the film because it was like lessons learned from screening the edit that they had. It wasn't working the way that they thought it was. A lot of things weren't clicking into place, so they went back into reshoots. And what I found interesting was a lot of it was just their set designer and John Carpenter with a camera, just the two of them doing it, which is awesome.
I always found that was one of the most frustrating things.
Yeah.
When you're first learning, like you're shooting a movie. First off, too, one of the things I learned quickly is no matter what you think of up here in your head, it's never
not how it's going to play out.
It's never going to be like that.
No.
Never. And that's just unfortunate because, I mean, the mind, it's limitless. It can be almost, I would say the only way you can get as close as to what you come up with up here in the noggin is animation.
Yeah.
Now with computers, you can get even closer, but still there's always
animation is so on rails
that
it's kind of hard to, once you have to have it so structured to a plan that get it through there. So you kind of have to know exactly where you're going. But
yes, like I quickly learned that, and then how much the editing process is like an X-ray machine.
Yeah.
For the principal photography, because like it really showed me how if your principal photography doesn't go right, whether you try to cover it up or not, it's going to really show in the editing.
Especially before the advent of digital. I mean, you can bounce that tennis ball back and forth as much as you want between analog and digital, but there is a big drawback with analog is that you can't really look at an assembly edit. Mm-hmm. Like with digital, if you have a good crew of people who are working well together, you can potentially have an assembly edit of a lot of scenes before you're even out of production, and then you can see things that aren't working and potentially fix problems that way.
No.
But
speaking of The Fog, like I forgot that was Dean Cundy.
Yeah, that was another thing that I dove into today. I was just like, oh man, how many did Dean do? Because their collaboration was cool. Mm-hmm. The two of them together is just, man, he was in that documentary too, and it's like his stoic nature when he talks about it. Like he's so passionate, but he still like is just like straight as a board when he's talking about it. He's interesting as hell to watch, but it's kind of funny at times. He was even mentioning, he was talking about like The Fog in the years following and like how people will come up to him and mention it. And he's like talking about how it's been referenced and stuff. And he's like, it makes me feel old, but also accomplished. The way he delivered it was so stale. But yet so funny. And I loved him. I loved him so much.
Well, no, I really, since that's one of the more fresher ones in my mind, I really love that opening where the guy is telling the story to the kids, and just how, like, again, this is one thing I feel like you don't get as much in today's films is the pacing. I'm a guy who likes a slower burn story, but even this movie is only what, 90 minutes, a little over 90 minutes long?
Yeah, it's not very long.
But it feels like it has that longer ghost story feel going on.
That subject matter, too, with like the revenge story of the crew of the ship, I think it has that slow burn nature to it, even though you may be not reflecting in the runtime, but the story itself has that weight. It's this ancient story.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But we were talking, too, earlier on in this horror run, we were talking about the fireside chat, like the campfire ghost story nature of things. And rewatching this, I was like, I kind of forgot a little bit just how like entrenched this was in that, and I was ecstatic to see that at play there.
Yeah, no, I just liked everything like that opening. That just like sets the tone, the promises, the payoff. Like it's a simple, solid ghost story, but that's pretty much all the exposition you need, and then it's like, whoop, okay, we're off.
Yeah.
So well written, I think.
Good use of props, good use of just simple elements to convey like a larger element at play. And yeah, Fogg's a good one. Moving further on in his career, I mean, had a lot of interesting ups and downs. And I think if you look at his personal life in relation to things, it makes things make a little bit more sense for some of the ups and downs that he had. I mean, he went through 2 marriages. He had several kids. Separate from his directing career, he now performs scores in the vein of a lot of the movies that he used to make.
Yeah, he does a lot of like just the music now, I think, mostly more so.
And he does like actual movie scores. Like he did the new run of the Halloween movies. He did the remake of Firestarter. He's got a lot irons going, but he also produces his own personal music with his two sons. And their collaboration is super cool. Like it's basically him just like riffing shit that he likes from like movies that he wanted to make that like maybe scripts that never got made.
Got made, yeah.
So it's like him just like jam sessioning with his 2 sons and just experimenting. And it's so freaking cool. Those 3 albums that are currently out are awesome. He has another 2 that he's calling Anthology, where he's basically just redoing certain scores that were on movies that actually did get made. So I mean, he's just slinging stuff out still, and it always makes me laugh too. He's a gamer, and he has a very
he's a gamer. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I will get into it in a bit, but he's very into Dead Space and a few others, and he has a very significant online presence. There was a thing, I think it was on Twitter, popped up a few years back, where somebody was talking like he had died. They were like, oh man, I really miss John Carpenter. His movies were the best. And then he himself, with his actual Twitter handle, like went on there and said, I'm not dead yet, but even though it looks like I am, something like that. And I was like, this dude's a freaking legend, even at his age.
Yeah.
So he still is in many ways the master, even though his directorial career did drop off after the 2000s. He directed Ghosts of Mars in 2001, which I don't want to say shot his career in the foot, but it didn't do him any favors.
No, yeah, that's definitely one that I remember like seeing that like advertised in the theaters, and I just remember like it was part of the marquee, like John Carpenter's Ghosts of Mars, and I didn't see it till years later.
Between that and Escape from LA, he was creative. Like his critical success was dwindling by that point.
Which is it's tough just to make it. It's even tougher to keep going. Yeah.
Especially, I mean, if you factor that in, he had an incredibly long run of success.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look at like when I compare to like Spielberg, in the sense of like there's someone I never thought would kind of fade a little bit, but in my opinion, I'm like, he kind of has. I would think so. It's like it's just to show how difficult it is to get there, stay there, but also too it can take a toll on you, like mentally, physically, just the work that goes into
even
making a
after
film.
Ghost of Mars. I mean, he launched a movie called The Ward, which I actually haven't seen, but it was part of how Amber Heard got successful. I mean, she starred in it.
Okay.
And then amidst all that, he also did a couple of little TV specials and things. But even now, he's coming out with since The Ward, he's coming out with his first directorial movie, I think, since 2010, or his directorial TV series, Suburban Screams. So he's doing a show for Peacock that's all like horror based.
Yeah.
And I think it's coming out this Halloween. I think it's coming out soon. So I'll be interested in checking that out and seeing what he has to do with that. And he didn't go away. He just wasn't as widely popular anymore. Yeah, I mean, he dipped not only in horror, he was very hefty into the action scene, which...
Well, it's strange, too. Like, so when I think... It's weird for me, when I think John Carpenter, one of the first movies that comes to my mind now is Big Trouble in Little China.
It's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, which I think is a great movie.
Yeah.
It definitely has those Carpenter horror elements going on.
Yes.
But I don't know if I'd consider that a horror movie at all. I'd put that more like action adventure.
It's kind of in an Indiana Jones realm.
Yeah, absolutely. It has,
even though it's so much
with Kurt
meant
Russell,
to be funnier.
It has that sort of a little bit of like a Goonies vibe too.
Yeah.
One thing I do like about a lot of his earlier films, like if you look at The Fog, Halloween, The Thing, Big Trouble in Little China. What am I missing in the 80s? What else? Escape from New York here. Starman, Christine.
Before we get too far in, I want to talk Dark Star.
Okay.
Because Dark Star is basically a primitive Star Wars that predates Star Wars.
See, I've never seen Dark Star. What I was going to say real quick before we get into that, I was just going to say, even They Live. There's the other one I was thinking of.
Oh, I love They Live.
I love stories that are smaller like event stories. Like you think of The Fog, it's the stakes are high for the people in the town, in the seaside town. But the scope, I guess is what the word I'm looking for. The scope of it is contained. It's a smaller sort of like taking place in a...
It's basically the origins of this town are being torn down.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. And like the smaller knit, like there isn't that... The grand spectacle of this of some of these movies is toned down more. Like they're more contained, smaller stories done really well.
Well, that also kind of taps into his philosophy with his composing as well, because he takes very simple concepts with music, but manages to make them feel very depth and found. And like
the earlier movies, definitely they are much more, like you said, simple concept.
Yeah,
that might be where maybe Ghosts of Mars and Escape from LA go a little bit wrong, or it tries to get too grand.
They try to do a little too much, I think.
Yeah, and you're trying to like do that popcorn summer blockbuster Marvel film, whatever.
Just a little bit too much. And it sucks because John is so good at making things just fun.
Yeah.
And I see how the wheels were turning there.
Yeah.
I see what he was trying to do. It just didn't all quite click together.
And that's not to say like
they're not even bad movies. No. They're just not huge critical successes.
Yeah. And like when I say that he doesn't make blockbuster movies, I mean in the sense of the scope of it.
Yeah.
I'm talking like that Lord of the Rings facade going on.
Yeah.
There are these like epic stories, the epicness of it. They are much more intimate, smaller, contained, simpler concepts done masterfully.
Yeah.
Which I love about it. Like I said, like The Thing, for example, the cast is what?
I can't think of a horror fan
12, something like that.
Something like
you have
that,
a very contained knit group. It is essentially kind of like the haunted house. Here are these guys stuck in a situation they really can't leave because they're in Antarctica.
That's as far as the interior production design there, I mean, you don't have it was very manageable.
Yeah.
They were able to build that on a set, on a stage, and control that environment very well.
Mm-hmm.
But the amount of practical effects that they had to put into that
the
most insane of a horror movie ever.
One of the best practical effect movies.
I always consider, we will go into the thing in depth at a certain point, but the main thing I love about the thing, it is the antithesis of the philosophy of Jaws and succeeds at doing it in spades.
The hell did you just say? Explain this to me.
Jaws' entire philosophy is about not showing the shark as much as humanly possible.
Oh,
the thing leans into horrifying you by what it
wants
is
to
showing.
Show you as much. And technically, though, you never really. I don't even think it has like an actual true form. Does the thing? I think it's more just.
No, it's just kind of ambiguous.
Which is, I think, part of the power of that movie.
Yeah.
That keeps it working.
The science, just the total fear of basically a biological entity invading like that. I mean, COVID and everything.
Yeah,
I think that had a resurgence during that time as well. And then you have Halloween. I think that the original Halloween, we've batted this back and forth a couple of times and talked about the invention of the slasher film.
Yeah.
I mean, Halloween, I would credit as, even though there is contention there, I would credit
Halloween
some people
did they say Texas Chainsaw?
Texas Chainsaw being the original.
They're definitely, either way, however you want to, whatever camp you want to fall in, they're definitely the progenitors of that.
Yes.
That genre.
Yeah. No, Halloween, I consider to be the best of the slasher films and the push for the starting gun, if you will, for the slasher movie.
Yeah. Okay.
Just the concept of the shape. And I think the best form of Michael, and as we said, we will dive deeper into Halloween at a later date. But the hollow nature of him as a character in that first installment, I think, is its best form.
Yeah.
It's just the unknown motivations to him, and John has talked about this topic at length in various interviews and whatnot. But I mean, I agree with his takes on it. I mean, I don't think it was one that really needed a sequel because his vacant nature was just part of what made him so scary. The more you elaborate on that, the weaker the concept gets. So the failings of some of those sequels, I think, can be attributed to that.
Well, I love too, and I'm going back to what I was saying. The scopes of his stories.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons I like Resident Evil, like why I like it, because it reminds me of Resident Evil too sometimes, where like you're stuck in a smaller situation or not necessarily dealing with a Death Star about to blow up the entire planet or something. It's a smaller group of people who lives are on the line, but they're normal people that tend to be. If you look at the heroes in like The Thing, The Fog, Halloween, like just normal people.
Yeah.
This would, I'd say, be almost like the antithesis depending on what movie you're looking at, of superhero stories.
Yes.
Even though it has those elements, the hero is always at the disadvantage.
I think you could make
the antagonist has all the power, which most good stories always do.
While John is like really great at horror, I think you can make the argument at that is horror is the opposite of the superhero story as like a genre.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, various tropes going on, various pick and choose your preference. But I think generally the horror story is about adversity and failure, whereas the superhero movie is about triumphing and exceeding expectations. So it's like they're diametrically opposed there.
Yeah. But anyway, you were saying, okay.
Sorry, we went through quite a lot there very fast.
No. But you were saying, too, you were mentioning, I've never seen Dark Star, but you were saying this is a Star Wars before it was Star Wars.
John has, like, from what I've seen in interviews and stuff, he's Mr. Carpenter, John Carpenter. I don't want to pretend like I'm on a first name basis with
hang on, let me get to
chomp it down.
A little ASMR action coming at you. You can cut that out.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay, go ahead.
He's had very mixed opinions on it. He's kind of just said, okay, yeah, that's the one that got me started.
Yeah.
But what I've always found very interesting about Dark Star was it's very similar to Star Wars.
Okay.
It didn't get any esteem. It didn't get any popularity when it came out.
I mean, Star Wars 2 is similar to tons of things that came before it.
It was only just a few years later that Star Wars came out.
Yeah.
Blew stuff like this completely off the map from being recognized. So. But then a few years later, he came out with Assault on Precinct 13, and that movie is much better than I think it gets credit for. They did a pretty solid remake of it a few years back with Lawrence Fishburne and a few people. That movie was also very solid, but I mean, it's a testament to how good the original was, I think. It was a really great, like, kind of like The Thing, this like bottle episode of a story.
Yes, that's a good, that bottle episode. That,
where you know,
like that, it reminds me of a lot of like the original Star Trek scripts series where like
they're trapped in a box.
Yeah, you have something they run into. I'm trying to think, like one of the like Devil in the Dark is a good episode. I can see all the episodes. I don't have the names in my head. City on the Edge of Forever. That was one I'm trying to think of.
Yeah.
Star Trek wise, the Tholian Web.
Oh, that is a good one. I do like
Spectre
that
the Gun, A Taste of Armageddon. All these. What I really like about, again, I'm kind of just repeating myself, but it has that similar, almost like serialized sort of, or story of the week nature going on, which I really enjoy.
Like in the best way possible. I can see how somebody might hear that and think, oh, it's just a story of the week. But
these are things that I love about some of the Carpenter's movies and stories.
He has that very accessible nature to him. He comes off to me as very much the everyman director, which is such a rare thing because they typically have such an ego and they don't feel like they've been through the same kind of life that you have. But John is very crass. I've always enjoyed that nature about him. I mean, literally in movies like They Live, he has the main character dying, flipping off the audience. Yeah. Like, I can't tell you how much I love him just for that alone. Like,
that's Roddy Piper too.
Yeah, yeah. Commonly well known for his bit part in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yes.
Tragically, we lost him a few years ago.
We did.
But awesome dude. I love Roddy Piper. Lost my train of thought.
We were talking about we were on Dark Star.
Yes, we've been on about 5 different things at once here.
Yeah, but anyway, let's.
Yeah, Dark Star was real interesting. That's moving through like Assault on Precinct 13.
Oh, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
there was like a little bit there where they started kind of remaking 70s movies like Assault on Precinct 13.
Well, there was a big long-standing trend of retapping and redoing John Carpenter movies in general. Like they did that prequel of The Thing.
Yeah,
which
I don't about that one.
I don't hate it.
I don't hate it.
Don't love it. Don't hate it. But see, my problem with it is the original is supposed to act as the prequel. Yeah. So why do you need a prequel? But that's my only real issue with it.
People need money.
Because money, that's why. Another really interesting topic I do want to talk about is Christine and how Christine relates to In the Mouth of Madness.
What?
Because Christine is a Stephen King novel, and In the Mouth of Madness is very obviously a smear campaign on Stephen King.
Oh, that's true. Okay, yeah, I gotcha.
So I do feel, given certain comments that King had, because King was very known for like not celebrating film adaptations of his novels.
Well, yeah, I think he had the same issue with The Shining, if I remember.
Yeah,
correctly.
it wasn't quite as bitter or heated, but it was just like, I think King at some point stated that the only movie adaptations that got his material right was like Stand By Me and Misery, I think, something like that. And
which I think you have. Yep,
yeah,
there it is.
As you can see, there was a thought process here from what I pulled out.
This is premeditation, that.
Yes. I have a problem. I also noticed that almost all the ones that I pulled out are either Shout Factory or... And I was like, cannot sing the praises enough of Arrow Video, Shout, and Screen Factory. Great. They do the Lord's work in getting the finest remasters out there. But yes, we were talking, Christine, In the Mouth of Madness, like the author in that...
Sutter Kane.
Sutter Kane, thank you. I literally just watched it, and you'd think I'd be able to remember. Sutter Kane, and then they almost comically directly state that it's not Stephen King.
There is a line in there. No, it's not.
He's like, he's outselling Stephen King.
Yeah.
Like just definitely a complete shot across the bow at Stephen King. But it's also kind of celebratory of him in a weird way. And just like the vast library of monster movies that he's made. I mean, it was, as much as it was a bit of a smear campaign against him, it was also kind of a celebration for him.
I didn't even think to look this up. Maybe I should. Is Mouth of Madness based on Lovecraft's Mountains of Madness, or is that the thing? Or
it might be.
I mean, it definitely has that Lovecraftian style.
Yes,
to it.
both that and thing do.
Yeah. Oh, so I never knew this. So Carpenter refers to The Thing, Prince of Darkness, and In the Mouth of Madness as his Apocalypse trilogy.
I did not know that was the intention.
Okay, I don't know if they're supposed to be. Oh, so yes. Okay, so it does pay tribute to. And the title is derived from Lovecraft's novella At the Mountains of Madness.
Yeah, interesting.
Which, if you've never read Lovecraft, I mean,
very worth it.
I agree. And now, of course, probably not the nicest person in the world.
Definitely not.
But Mountains of Madness is a good horror story. Though I will say his writing, he keeps it vague on purpose, I believe. So it can get a little difficult to read, or like even I have to take some time and like try to picture what he's getting at. But I think that's the point. Mm-hmm. And that's where he gets that.
It's meant to kind of stir crazy.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
But yeah, I think Prince of Darkness, They Live are some of his more underrated ones. I wish that they had gotten more steam than they did, but that's just kind of where the chips fell.
Yeah.
I mean, Starman also didn't get a lot of praise like I think it deserved, but it was just so off the beaten path of everything else he was doing. It was kind of more of like along the lines of E.T.
Yeah.
And I think it was like after E.T. stomped The Thing at the box office.
Probably.
Was why that attracted him.
Well, it's almost like, excuse me, it's almost as if sometimes John Carpenter can get caught, and tell me what you think of this, in between mainstream or like cult status in terms of.
He lives somewhere in between the two.
Yeah, because I wouldn't put all of his stuff as perfect, like 100% cult.
I think he's like the best B-movie director of all time, but because he came out swinging so hard with Halloween and it landed so firmly in a box office success, he kept getting dragged up into other things. Which is great for him. I am so glad that happened. But I think it did kind of take him out of element. And I think he kind of tried to make it back into that in later portions of his career. And he also, where a lot of people would say that his career skewed, I think that there were some changes in his personal life. Like he got divorced from his wife around that time. There were some big changes for him. So attribute those things where you will. I'm not certainly going to pretend to know the fine details, but there were some massive shifts for him. And at that time, he'd created a lot. I mean, he'd created basically a cinematic universe of awesome horror at the time. So what else we got going on here? I mean, that's the series work that he did too. I forget the title of the series that he worked on. He directed several episodes on, but he had a bit part in it where he played a dead version of himself. And it's one of my favorite things of all time. One of the ones that also I think that is underrated for him is Memoirs of an Invisible Man.
Yes.
It's one of my favorite interpretations of the Invisible
Man.
Man.
That is, like, I haven't seen that one in a while, but I love,
Chevy Chase in that, and
Sam Neill, but Sam Neill is the one going after him.
Yeah.
Is he a police officer in it, or a detective?
Which was before In the Mouth of Madness. So I feel like they gained a rapport after that and wanted to do some more. But Sam Neill played a fantastic villain in that movie.
Yeah.
Whereas it just clicked and made sense for that. And it's like, why wasn't that an element of the original?
Yeah.
Like him being chased by the law so directly like that. But Daryl Hannah in that. But yeah, I think that one's a little bit underrated. The freak accident nature, the twists that they took with it, spinning it into more of a freak accident, not necessarily the intention of what all the science was that they were trying to figure out. It was just like literally somebody spilled a cup of coffee and it blew up the whole building. All the visuals in that one too. Like the set design of like suspending different portions of things. Just even like the simple nature of you can see Chevy Chase's character the whole time.
Yeah.
But like playing it, like there were a lot of clever little tricks in that one.
No,
I feel
that is an underrated one, definitely.
Yeah. It is kind of surprising that the thing was as early as on in his career as it was.
Well, yeah, if you had to pick your favorite John Carpenter movie,
no question, it's The Thing.
It's The Thing.
It is unquestionably The Thing.
I would say The Thing is my favorite too.
I think amongst horror fans that I've talked to, The Thing is consistently number one in their category across the board, not even just for Carpenter. Deservedly so. It's an incredible movie. I love the nature of trust in that movie. I love the ending scene in that movie. And it just ties so directly into its theme and lack of trust. And is the thing going to escape? And I think it just wraps up perfectly.
The paranoia of who is it, who's not.
And I think it's only gotten truer with time how important that movie is.
Oh, absolutely. So you had mentioned he was into. Did we talk about him into games? You had mentioned.
Oh I would like to dive into this. So
yeah,
I mean, as far as like what titles he's played, I don't know like high specifics, but I know that he is a very big fan of the game Dead Space.
Dead Space, yeah.
He actually petitioned studios to direct a film adaptation of it.
That game has a John Carpenter like
feel
style.
to it.
Yeah.
Which is why I think he was so drawn to it. And he like took a legitimate pitch. He went to the studios and was like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And he kind of got shut down. And then less than a year later, they announced from James Wan, we're getting a Dead Space adaptation.
Oh my gosh.
And I was kind of like, just give it to the man.
Yeah.
Come on. That is certainly no knock to James Wan. I love his work in horror. He has made some of my recent favorites. In Malignant, I thought was a lot of fun. Conjuring series is great. I don't think James Wan has a certainly great seal of approval to touching pretty much any type of genre that he wants. But the fact that John Carpenter brought this to the studios and brought the attention of this forward, and then you're just going to slam the door in his face is kind of like a...
Does that surprise you though? That sounds exactly like something that they would do.
But it's like, I feel like that's where so much of John's like F you attitude comes from.
Yeah.
Is like I feel like a lot of that happened to him. Because he's in a lot of the interviews I've seen of him, he talks about constant scripts that he was writing. So I assume a lot of what he was trying and pushing forward went nowhere.
Yeah.
And frustrated the shit out of him, as it would anybody. But that's part of what I love about John is just his F you attitude. And I can't think of another director like him that has that. And it's just like feels so accessible and has that attitude like that is so relatable. We've both been through our fair share of the film industry.
Oh yeah.
And the more I go through it, the more I relate to the you attitude. Like,
well, being like he's considered a master of horror, and we've talked about some of the other movies that you could argue are not horror.
Yeah,
but if we are talking about The Fog, The Thing,
Vampires, Village of the Damned. I always forget about that one.
They Live. I think, again, I'll go back to what I said. I really do think that it comes down, for me, it comes down to that. The execution of what's in frame and what's not, what's told and what's left up to you as the audience to be a co-creator of the story. And I think a lot of horror today kind of just relies heavily
on market research.
That too relies heavily on the quintessential jump scare.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but to the point where it's cliche. Either it's more like, I feel like horror has gotten, and you tell me you're more into horror than I don't watch as much. It's gotten a little bit more formulaic, and like people are not understanding like why you're doing something to throwing it in there, but you're not asking, why am I doing that? Why break this rule? Why make that happen? Other than because you saw it in other things recently.
Yeah. Horror has kind of climbed a ladder in, I would say, the last 20 or 30 years to where it's more accepted mainstream.
Yeah.
Not totally, but more so than it ever has been.
Yeah.
These recent years. And I think that has come with a certain shaving off of things to the genre, whereas like like part of the appeal of cheap, shitty B movies was that they were cheap and that they were shitty. And now you're having these like borderline Oscar-worthy made movies that are like completely cut out the quote unquote bullshit.
Yeah.
And I think that has been what a lot of horror fans have grown to love. One of my favorite horror movies of all time, Dr. Giggles, is horrible.
Dr. Giggles?
It is terrible. And that's why I love it, because it is horrible.
Dr. Giggles?
It is the worst thing ever made. It is so bad.
Sounds like a defunct children's toy.
Yes. It is not good, but I love it because it is crap.
So that's definitely one of those guilty pleasures.
Yes. And I'm certainly not equating that to John's work, but there is an element of that B movie in there. And I think that it is charm. It is an essence of its time for the genre.
Yeah.
And I think we've lost a lot of that. And whereas like film at the time for horror, especially because horror was like not necessarily the bargain bin, but it was the cheap, accessible option for filmmaking, because studios knew there was only a certain audience of people that were going to go see it.
Yeah.
So they're like, here's a couple bucks, go make something happen. And it was that being left alone to do your own thing, I think, that was a lot of the success of horror, because a lot of creative freedom in that genre where people were doing their own thing, because studios just like, go do whatever. Here, go. Here's $2. Go make a movie.
What accent was that? What was that?
Something. I don't know.
It's $2.
It's $2. Go make a movie.
Go make a movie. I don't know what. And
the very popular Boston film industry.
Yeah. Well, yeah. One thing I love about Carpenter is, I think this goes back to what I said. A lot of the almost like a minimalist in what he works with, and I don't know if that was more out of necessity,
yes,
or if that's always a conscious like effort and decision when he's making this film.
One of the big things I've noticed about him as a director is he shoots very quickly and efficiently.
Yeah.
He doesn't necessarily put the most mind-blowing piece of film you've ever visually out there that you've ever seen, but he shoots extremely competently quickly.
Yeah.
And I think he does it better than anybody that was working at that time, especially. He knows how to just get in there, get it, and get out.
Yeah. Definitely a working man's, like you said it, every man's director.
And more like that's part of why I follow him so heavily, because I feel like he's my kind of dude. Like, you know, I want to know how to do things the way he does it, because I feel like I can do that. I feel like he is my kind of guy, somebody I could go to a bar, have a drink, and talk with. Yeah. As opposed to like somebody who's living in an entirely other stratosphere who I will never reach their level.
Yeah.
And that is not meant as a knock. That just means I relate to him. I get him. And it only makes me love and try to understand him that much.
Yeah, and those other people.
Yeah, everyone else.
Is this going to be an explicit episode?
Oh, definitely.
Oh, okay.
We managed to not do that for Trick or Treat. I don't know how that happened.
I don't know how we did either.
Yeah, I knew going in this one was going to be.
I have a working job. I have to be careful now. No, I'm just kidding. Who knows? You swear I didn't say. Hey, okay. Hey, I went to Catholic school. All right. Well, I did kind of just do it. I'm about to put my foot in my mouth, but I'm going to finish it anyway. I was told, as long as you don't say it directly to someone, swear words are fine. So like if like something happens, it's not like a sin. There's nothing wrong with it. So like if like you like hit your toe and you're in pain, you can
flab it.
Or you can just shout out shit, fuck, son of a balls. And it's fine because you're reacting to the pain. Yeah. Now if I look at you and say, hey, fuck you, now that I've crossed the line because I'm directing animosity towards you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah. Just throwing
food for thought.
Yeah. Anyway.
I like it.
Do with that what you will.
Yeah. Now, I do consistently come back to that. We were talking about that ending shot from, or not that ending moment for the Roddy Piper's character.
Yeah.
And They Live. It's like, God, is that relatable? Like, it's so validating. It's one of those extremely validating moments in cinema.
Yes.
Where it's like, it feels okay to be totally against the system.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of John's charm. Part of John Carpenter's charm.
He had gone to USC, I think, right, originally, and then he dropped out, or?
I believe so. I know his original short that he did won an Academy Award for Best Short.
Oh, it did?
Part of why he rose to success so fast. Because I mean, as soon as that happened, I mean, he made Dark Star. Some other things happened, but he also was working pretty heavily in music, I know, and got some other irons in the fire at that time. But it was kind of until that award for the short that directing really took off for him. That's the other thing I had forgotten until researching for this, that Halloween he adapted from an idea he had for a sequel to Black Christmas.
Okay.
He had actually pitched it to the original creator of Black Christmas because they kept asking, like, well, what would you do if it was a sequel? He was like, oh, well, I'd do this. And they're like, all right, we'll just take that and make that a script.
Yeah.
And they did, and that was Halloween.
Interesting. Maybe I imagine I imagine things all the time. Yeah, it should be. Did you send me like an older
Yeah, maybe.
copy?
Possible.
You son of a.
I don't know.
Yeah, I have in beginning film course at USC Cinema during 1969. Carpenter
must
wrote
have
and
cut it out
directed
by accident.
Captain Voyeur. Oh, they rediscovered this in the archives in 2011.
Yeah.
Huh.
There's been a lot of that going on.
Oh, he ultimately dropped out of school in the final senior semester to make his first feature film. That's some balls.
And I actually know a couple people that actually have done that.
Dropped out of school, or
Just purely to put that money forward to make a movie.
if we were here's an interesting. Okay, if we were to make, and I pose this question to anyone listening, if you're going to do a film, even doesn't have to be a film. It can be a TV show, it can be a film, it can be a book, it can be a poem, any form of art you want it to be. It can just be a painting, but it has to be in a John Carpenter tone or style. What are you doing? What's like the first thing that sort of comes to your mind? Do you think horror? Do you think more adventure, action?
I definitely think like somewhere in between all of
Somewhere
that.
in between that? Yeah. Pitch me your John Carpenter story, whatever project right now. Give me, go.
Off the cuff.
Off the cuff. Let's do this.
A priest
Yeah.
has to find a cat who is the source of all evil.
The what?
It escaped from a veterinarian.
And you're going to call this runt of the litter.
No, this is going to be
The Meowth of Madness.
the Meowth of Madness. I love it. Yes, the Meowth of Madness. That's it.
That's the movie.
There you go.
That's
That's
everything. Well, anyway, the point I was getting at is like it's difficult to, and this is a thing that everyone says don't ever do as like a writer or a filmmaker, but painters do it a lot all the time. At least I think they do. Don't quote me on that. Maybe it's musicians. One of the other field disciplines out there in art is you try to emulate someone else's style.
Yeah.
Not to copy them or
It's not possible, really.
No, yeah, but just to help you practice.
Yeah.
And get better and learn your own voice in it. Now, it's one thing that for some reason, when it comes to writing, everyone's like, no, don't do that. Absolutely not. You'll drown your own voice out. I think, especially when you're starting, I actually think I would have benefited maybe a little bit from that. I'm not saying like you don't have to write a whole novel or make a whole film one way.
Where I see the
try
benefit
to
of
like
that.
just maybe just like a short story or come up with one scene and say, okay, I want to try and do this scene the way John Carpenter would have.
I don't think that does anything to benefit your own personal creative voice. What I think it does is it gives you a better practiced hand at
it's teaching you the skills.
outer edge stuff.
No,
Like,
I think it's just helping build the skills that you can use.
yeah, it helps. It helps you learn the skills, not.
No, yeah, I'm not saying discover your voice, but I'm saying that it is like you can learn, techniques that you might not have thought of.
Foot in the door, as it were.
Yeah, so I think it's just like an interesting thing to like try out.
Yeah,
I feel
I like it. It's something different.
like I tried going back to like Lovecraft. I tried it one time. Couldn't obviously I couldn't write nearly as good as that, but it did teach me a little bit of more of like, okay, how I can play with the words and how I can still paint a picture but be vague, and how you doing that type of style does create like a sense of horror.
Yeah.
So if I am trying to go for something that I want to actually invoke some fear or terror in someone, I'm like, okay, I remember that technique. How do I now make it more my own? So there is something to be said in.
It's almost like building backwards.
Yeah.
Like going into something you like, bringing it back. So you're doing less. I think
It's just a way to teach yourself other skills and other techniques that other artists, writers, performers have done in the past.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that it's 100%. You might hate it too, but at least then you know, okay, that's definitely not me. And I'll pitch that out. So what has he been doing now lately? So I know he said he's more into the music or been cranking out, but he had nothing to do with the more recent Halloween films, correct?
Well, he did actually. He scored them, and he was part of the writing team. Now, how much?
Oh, he was part, but he didn't direct.
He did not direct them. How
Okay.
much he was actually integral to those scripts, I don't know.
Okay.
But he definitely did, with his two sons, do the scores for them, and I think all three of the scores are absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he's still even those the remakes of some of his stuff. He's been attached. He's a writer or a composer in some way, just to give it some weight and authority. He does have coming up. I'm excited to see Suburban Screams coming up on Peacock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
you were talking about this. Yeah.
He's directing a small horror series for them. It's just like a mini series type deal, and it's just something Peacock's building up their horror library, so they pulled him in to do a little thing. But it's like the first thing he's directed
in a while, yeah.
Almost 13 some years.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what he does with it. That's got an interesting wide cast and a lot of newer actors, some people that aren't as well known. So it should be a fun watch. So just to see where his head's at, what he's cooking with is. I know listening to Lost themes, I know he's had a lot of stuff kicking around in his head. Like, so it should be interesting.
No, yeah. If you were, I would definitely say, regardless of whether you like some of the films or not, I do think in terms of the pantheon of directors, creators, writers, musicians, John Carpenter's in there.
Yeah,
I think.
Just the multi-talented. He can write, he can direct, and he can score. He definitely knows how to handle a camera because, I mean, even just as we were talking on The Fog, a lot of those B-shots that they inserted after that first edit, he shot with his own hands. So, I mean, he knows what he's doing on a lot of fronts in filmmaking, and I think that's a rare quality. And a lot of directors, I think that they know how to communicate what they want, but not necessarily how to pick up and do, and he's definitely one that knows how to pick up and do.
And with that, when we keep going, I was just like,
I'm good.
Did we want to?
Yeah, I'm good.
I was like, and with that, the spoopiness comes to a...
I don't know how I feel
comes to a pause, not an end.
Yeah,
comes to a pause.
I mean, I may pick up a horror topic here or there, but...
Yeah, we'll still owe it, yeah.
But I know for sure I want to do The Ring in spring, because it's a spring horror.
The Ring in spring?
Like, not... Like the movie The Ring.
You want to do the... Oh, okay. I had no clue what you were talking about. I was like, I've never heard of that one. Yeah. The Ring in Spring.
You know, that classic movie.
That classic movie with Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, The Ring in Spring. They were tap dancing all over the place.
He jumped off a pole.
They had carpet this thick in that movie.
Singing in the Ring.
Singing in the Ring
instead of the rain. I'm full of bad ideas this episode.
That's the Lord of the Rings prequel.